Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today I'm gonna show you all the decks that I've been working on since the full set has been spoiled to us. And even before that, I was already toying with some ideas. I've been playtesting with my usual testing group, which are, in my opinion, some of the best European players in the world. So you probably knows the Soup Racers, a lot of people who won PQs in Europe, so a lot of very good players. And this is kind of like the decks that I've been working on. Some of them are not so competitive, but some are definitely are. But in any case, you're gonna have a lot of fun trying them out by yourself. And this is why I wanted to show them to you today. The first deck is definitely probably the least competitive, but the funniest and the most original one, and it is my Shirut combo deck. So why do I say it's a combo deck? It's because it's not an aggro deck. It's not trying to kill you as quickly as possible. It's not a control deck. It obviously does not control the game very much, just a strict minimum. It's not a mid-range deck either, because it's a deck that is trying to combine a particular combination of cards in order to give yourself a huge advantage. In this case, the combination of cards is either, if I'm playing a deck that has the potential to kill my Shirut in one go, it's either going to be Shirut combined with Shadowed Intention, which is the new card of the set that turns this deck into a potential powerhouse. So the idea that someone can either kind of discard, take down our Shirut or Rival's Fallet, we can play Shadow Intentions into Shirut to prevent this from happening. So that's a very strong things we can do. Another thing we can do to play around Shadowed Intention, to play around basically removal against our particular leader, is to defend our Shirut with obviously discard spells, so Spark of Rebellions and Kira. So the other things, if we are playing against a deck that does not plan to kill our Shirut using specific removals, but simply by attacking him, then we're gonna have obviously all of our equipments to bring up the health of Shirut, to bring him out of danger, as well as a huge amount of healing coming from midnight repairs, which can heal our Shirut up to 8. So basically the idea of the deck is, in the early stage of the game, you're going to be playing units like R2 or B1 Security Team and Village Protector, or even this guy Grief Kara, which can allow us to get some bold presence, trade, make sure we don't fall too far behind on board before Shirut comes out, as well as obviously give us some cards along the way. Once we have enough cards, we can use also upgrades in order to boost our units, so then they don't. So then we can keep the board under control. This is Entrench can be used for that purpose. Entrench is also something we used in order to put this on space units, because we don't have any space presence. So once again, we don't try to control the game completely. We just try to get so we don't get too far behind by the time Shirut comes. When Shirut comes, of course, we start dumping a bunch of upgrades on him to make him almost impossible to kill. As well as killing the opponent extremely quickly. We put protectors so the opponent has to attack our Shirut, and then we heal up our Shirut with Midnight Repair, and we make him invulnerable to hard removal like Rival's Fall using Season Shadowed Intention. Kira and Spark Rebellions are particularly important cards because they are going to be used on the turn Shirut flips in order to protect him against anything that could kill him by the time he gets deployed to the moment where he gets his first upgrades. We play all the traditional upgrades to make sure we're difficult to kill. Electro Salve, Jeda's Lightsaber. Covert Strength is an excellent way to heal and boost Shirut from the smuggle, so we don't run out when we are out of cards. Grief Karma and This Is the Way are extremely important cards in order to keep ourselves afloat. With a lot of upgrades and make sure we don't run out of gas. This Is the Way is probably the most important card of the deck. I don't think the deck would be possible. This is the fourth with me is to boost Shirut and give him shield at the same time. So I think it's a very cool deck. It is definitely very unique. It is nothing. I mean, obviously, Shirut Voltron deck have been a thing since Shirut has been deployed, since Shirut has been revealed, but very few but this set, I think like this archetype is getting a lot of help Shadow Intention obviously is a huge upgrade for the deck. B1 security team is actually quite key to have like early sentinels. Is good to keep ourselves alive in the game, as well as being possibly upgrade carriers is a big boost. R2D2 is also an excellent body that allows us to dig for our specific combo pieces. Depending on the matchup, we might want to be digging for Shadowed Intentions or dig for Moment of Peace, and Grief Karma can also do the same thing, and this is the way you can also dig for Shadow Intentions. So a couple of sideboard cards. We got Unmask the Conspiracy, which is additional discard against decks that have more ways to deal with Chirrut. Regional Governor is another way to block potential card that can one-shot Chirrut before he gets big. Evidence of Crime is going to be our anti-upgrade that allows us to put upgrades and move them into Chirrut. And finally, Evacuate is going to be a way to, if we're playing against decks that are very aggressive, to clean up the board before Chirrut gets deployed and make sure that Chirrut does not get killed instantly as it gets deployed. So that's the idea of the deck. It's a very fun deck. Unfortunately, it doesn't work as well on practice that I was hoping it would, but it's a very fun deck, and if you're looking for a deck that can win games and is quite fun and different to play than anything you've ever played before, I think this is a good choice. Oh, sorry. Oops. How do you... oh yeah, the next deck that I wanted to show you guys is called Now There Are Two Jedi. It's an Anakin yellow deck. It's kind of a tempo, aggro tempo deck that I think might not be the best build for it, but it is definitely something that that I've been toying around, and I think it was quite good. So the idea of this deck is fairly simple. You are going to be putting some pressure with some powerful 2-drops. You got a Green Squadron, Anakin's Interceptors. We got the Delegates and the R2D2. And the way we work is that on turn 2, we're going to try to play Now There's Two of them to add an additional big threat on the board. So it doesn't work with Green Squadron, but it does work with all 3 of the 2-drops. They all are Republic or Jedi. We play Now There's Two of them, and we play for 5-drop. We play either a Plo Koon for 5 or an Anakin Skywalker for 5. So Anakin turn 2 with this deck is very possible. One of the cool things is that R2D2 not only gives us a Republic card to play, but also allows us to dig for the combo piece for there's 2 of them and Anakin Skywalker. But obviously that's not the only thing this deck does. If that was the only thing that the deck does, it would be pretty bad. It's just a side dish. The rest is pretty much just aggressive. We play Jesse, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated card of the set. It's a 5/4 for 3, which is putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the opponent. Can swing for 5, can deal tremendous amount of damage. You're giving droids to the opponent, but most decks really can't really do much with those droids anyway, so it's really not that big of a deal. And the pressure that it puts on the board is huge. It's also Republic, meaning that if we have Jesse on board, then we can play Now There's Two of them, and then play an Anakin, or even a Mace Windu later on in the game, which also has the Republic trait, and fits very well into our aggro plan, because it comes into play, kill something, untap, and then attack the base. We also play, we have the Force package, so we have quite a few Force units here. We have the Ezra, the Anakin, the Plo Koon, the Mace Windu, and obviously our Anakin himself. Anakin is going to be used. I think Anakin is as a leader. Forgot about talking about the most important thing. I think the combination of Anakin and R2D2 is very strong because it means that R2D2 can kill anything that has 4 health right from the get-go without probably dying, which is pretty big. Anakin can trade with your Battlefield Marine without dying and all that stuff. So Anakin as ability cost HP, yes, but the amount of HP that you're saving whenever you are trading with those early game units is massive. So it is well worth the price to pay, in my opinion. We also play, so we have all those, like the Anakin Interceptor is only a 2/3, but it can become a 4/3 and kill an enemy, a Green Squadron, or anything really that could be played in the game. Another thing is like the Delegate. So Delegate might be a weird choice for a lot of you guys. The Delegate does everything we want. It's a 1/5 on the board that is relatively sticky. It can turn into a 3 attack unit thanks to Anakin. and it draws us a card when it comes into play, which allows us to dig for the combo that we're looking for. Yes, it does make you discard when he leaves play, but to be fair, people are usually not going to be targeting him because he has so much health. So I find him to be quite good. Some people might be wondering why I'm not playing Grogu instead, which is also a 4th unit that allows us to cheat and play Anakins and Plo Koon. The problem is, like, Grogu as a 0-5, even with the boost of Anakin, doesn't really do much. But it is definitely a possible option if you want to try. But I like the delegate because the delegate can actually kill stuff combined with Anakin's ability. And also with DR44 blasters, he also has 3 attack as well. So yeah, the rest of the deck is classic aggro stuff. We can play Waylay, we play Surprise Strike, we play DR44 blasters. Depending on the meta, we might want to be playing Breaking In instead. And obviously we have the 4th throw package, of course. We got tons of force units, so we're going to take advantage of 4th throw as well. Minion Falcon for the pressure. So it is kind of a tempo, aggro tempo deck here. Kind of cool aggro tempo deck with a couple of interesting, powerful synergies. And finally, the highest in the cake here for this deck is obviously the power of Anakin Skywalker, which is just a humongous body. In my opinion, one of the greatest qualities of Anakin is the amount of stats that he has. He's very, very easily become a 6/7 for 6, which I think is tremendous. Like it's a lot of stats, and also has overwhelm. So in my opinion, he's an excellent aggro leader, kind of aggro mid-range leader, trading early on with the board, using his ability to take advantage on the board, then dealing a bunch of damage, and then finishing the job with Anakin. He's also Force, which enables the 4th throw, and also enables, of course, the ability to play, there's 2 of them, into Mace Windu. In the sideboard here, we get a bunch of, don't pay too much attention to the sideboard, because obviously it's very early in the meta, so nobody knows really what to expect. We get Tech as a way to get ourselves more gas in very grindy matchups. We have a huge discard package to go along with Forethought in order to help against control, and a couple of Surprise Strike to raise the opponent whenever you're playing against aggro, and then some Disciplining Firefighters against people who play upgrades. The next deck is my Yoda deck, this is basically your classic red, white, blue mid-range deck, but featuring Yoda instead of Han or Rey. So what does this deck do really? So basically, what is special about Yoda compared to these 2 other leaders? Well, first of all, Yoda of course deploys a lot later, so by nature the deck is a bit more controlling than those previous decks. And he is, in my opinion, he's one of the best 7 cost leader in the game. The impact that he has when he comes into play is huge, because he comes into play, very likely will kill something, and becomes and then you get a 4/9 body, which is pretty difficult to take down, that heals you every time you attack. So that's basically everything you can ask for. He's also Force, which allows you to enable 4th throw as well. So that's a lot of things going on for this leader. His leader ability is also pretty strong. There's actually quite a few synergies that you have. So one of the big qualities of Yoda is the synergies with You're My Only Hope. So if you think that now there's 2 of them is a strong card, while You're My Only Hope is even easier to set up, because you don't even need to build your deck around it really, or you don't need to have like a Republic unit matching the traits, which can be sometimes very difficult. There's no this restriction of having only 1 unit in play. There's also not the restriction of the unit being a non-vehicle. It can be a vehicle if you want to. And all you need is basically a unit leaving play, using Yoda's ability, draw a card, draw something that you want to cheat into play with your My Only Hope. So generally speaking, it's going to be a 5 drop. And if you're later on in the game, you can also cheat and play an Obi-Wan, a Luke, a Redemption, Mace Windu, or even a Great Dragon. And the idea is then, and once you do this, all you have to play, you just play your My Only Hope, and you can cheat this card into play very easily. So that's a very, very powerful synergy here that we have. So in order to take advantage of this, we obviously play a lot of 2 drops, because the idea is to have a 2 drop dying And then you have a 5-drop, which is in this case is either going to be Poe Dameron or the Sentinel, the Senatorial Corvette. And we can cheat them in play on turn 2, which is, you think Poe Dameron is strong, imagine a Poe Dameron, a fully grown Poe Dameron at 6/6 on turn 2, it is insanely powerful. So you get those very powerful synergy going on. So why did I choose Senatorial Corvette as the other one? I like this one quite a bit. It gives us a bit of diversity to be able to go in space. It basically one-shot the 7th Defender thanks to his Saboteur trait, and when he dies, it does discard a card, which does synergize well with our K2SO and our 4th throw as well. So I felt that there was a lot of things going on that were quite good, but to be fair, in that slot, there's many other cards you could consider. You could consider the new Anakin, which is also a 6/6 for 5. I thought it was a little bit too repetitive with Poe Dameron, but maybe that's what you want to have. And you can also play the 5/6 for 5 in space from Shadow of the Galaxy. I forgot the name of the card, but it's also a viable option. So this is not set in stone. What I'm trying to say is that you need to have a critical mass of 5 drops in order to increase your chance of triggering You're My Only Hope with Yoda combined with Yoda's ability. So that's pretty kind of much what is special about the deck. We also play 1 copy of Foresight. So Foresight basically says that during the regroup phase, you can name a card, and if it's the right card, you get to draw that card. So if you are activated Yoda's ability, where Foresight will basically draw your card. So basically, kind of what is written on this card really is it's a +2 health that says every time you use Yoda's ability, instead of having to put the card back on top, you basically draw it. That's kind of what it is in practice. Even though of course the need needs to survive. But the good thing is that the +2 health will help with that. So Foresight is good. It's not as good as I thought it was. Definitely, you need to have a unit in play. You need to stay alive. You need to have Yoda's ability being used. Sometimes you don't want to use Yoda's ability because you don't want to lose initiative. So it doesn't draw as many cards as I thought. But already a +0/+2 that draws you even 1 card is already pretty good in my opinion. Compare this to Resilience, which gives a +0/+3 and nothing else. Foresight is actually pretty good by comparison, even if it only draws you 1 card. We have other draw engine with Skule, for example. We play quite a few red cards in the deck, and once again, Yoda's ability can be used in order to increase our chance to draw a card with Skule, so it's kind of neat. Then we just play some very solid 2-drops, the A-Wings, the Sabines, the Ketsu Onyo. Then some solid 3-drops with Yoda to enable 4th throw, Concordant Interceptor to stabilize space. Open fire, of course. Play a fair bit of removal because 3 open fires, 2 Father Dragons, 2 takedown, and 1 reverse fall. The reason why we have to play a lot of removals because we are playing kind of a control deck at the end of the day. We want to get into this late game situation. We want to slow down the game enough so we can actually deploy Yoda and get some good stuff going on. If we can't get to the Yoda deploy, we're going to be in big trouble. So we need to be able to slow down the game. That's why we want those removal. And of course, the more removal we have, the more often we're going to be able to trigger Yoda's ability, and do all those crazy cool shenanigans. So, and then of course, late game, we got the traditional Luke Skywalker, Mace Windu, Redemption, Great Dragon, all late game stuff. The sideboard here, we got more of a discard package to combine with 4th throw and all the Centaur Corvettes and K2SO. More Rivals Fall against matchup with Ravens, more Great Dragon for late game, some top targets to help us against aggro, and some tech for, once again, grindy matchups. So that's kind of the idea of the deck here. Is it the final version? Absolutely not. It's just a first draft of kind of like in the dark, not taking into account the meta, how I would kind of build this deck. And I thought, from my experience, one of the most powerful things you can do with this deck is just simply Yoda deploy into Luke Skywalker. Is just extremely powerful. So you play, you start off, you play Luke Skywalker, you kill something, then you use Yoda's ability, then you to put something that has a high cost on top of the deck, you deploy Yoda, you kill another high cost thing with Yoda, and suddenly you've killed 2 things, and you have a 6/7 Restore 3 in play, and a 4/9 with Restore 2 in play. And from my experience, it's fairly difficult for opponents to recover from this. It's very powerful. By the way, the base that you have to play for this deck is the Nest, because it's the Seagull Nest, and you cannot play any other base that's not negotiable. Moving on, we got the spicy stuff. Again, that is Chancellor Palpatine. The card that I've said, I was not super optimistic whether this card is going to see play in competitive in my first impression review. After playing with the card a lot more, I think that his flip ability is not as difficult to trigger as I initially thought. With that being said, it still sometimes loses to itself. Sometimes there's a situation where your opponent just plays very well around it, and I'm expecting that as people are going to get better at the game, that's people are going to become better and better at playing against Palpatine and basically prevent him from flipping as often as he normally would. So there's definitely some cases where the deck loses to itself, but I feel like this version is fairly flexible in how it can play the game. So let's show you how I build this deck. So this is basically a hard control Chancellor Palpatine deck. So why do I go for hard control? Because to me, Chancellor Palpatine is a control leader. He gives you a lot of value. Yes, of course, he can deal damage to the base and put some bodies on the board, but really the crux of what Chancellor Palpatine does is really very much just gives you value. And the other thing that is, it does not deploy on the board. And it's, in my opinion, good luck building an aggro deck without a leader that can actually deploy. So to me, it is by nature kind of it's a value, either a value deck or a control deck. You have to either build it with value. Some people have been playing it green to try to generate value out of him. Some people, like me, are playing it blue. I think majority of people are playing it blue. And here's my take on it. So basically, early stage of the game, we want to have an heroism unit that can trade with the opponent. That's why we're playing 3 copy of Phase 1 Clone Trooper. I never thought I would be playing this card in this set, but here we are. And Low Thought Insurgent, which is just basically Phase 1 Clone Trooper, but slightly better because of his ability. Though the goal of those 2 drops here is to trade with the opponent and generate value with Chancellor Palpatine. So we can flip Chancellor Palpatine right from turn 2. That's basically the goal. Kuel is the other 2-drop we're playing. Kuel is amazing in this deck because the fact that we can play both the heroism blue card and the villainy blue cards allows us to build a deck that has a lot of very strong cards in it. And also we can play almost mono blue without much of a downside. That means that Kuel is going to draw us card almost systematically whenever it's going to attack. So that's a very, very strong thing about Kuel in this particular deck, is its ability to just draw us a card fairly often. He's going to draw us a card fairly often whenever it attacks, which I think is a big deal. Then we got 3 Bazine. So Bazine is not really meant to be played on turn 1. Actually, you cannot play it on turn 1 because Chancellor Palpatine will be on the heroism side. The goal of Bazine is very much just to be a cheap way to be playing. Sometimes what you're going to do with Palpatine is like you need a cheap villainy card to turn on to the light side. And once you're on the light side, you can play you can play like a cheaper light unit. So that's something you can do whenever you're stuck on the whenever you are on the dark side and you only have light side cards in hand. Is flip to the dark side with Bazine and play something relatively cheap on heroism. It's also obviously just this card is just very strong in hard control deck. It allows us to remove cards that are difficult to deal with otherwise. Very strong in the control mirror, obviously, and obviously we can. Another great quality of it is that we can smuggle it, which means that as long as we have Bazine in our resource pile, we're always gonna have a black card to play to flip to the other side. And this is my opinion the key to be able to consistently flip from the dark side. So basically, to flip from the light side to the dark side, you need to have cheap heroism units to flip to go from light to dark. So this is why we play a lot of cheap heroism units, and also Chancellor Palpatine also generates clone troopers that will be light side unit that can die in. The way you flip from the dark side to the light side is by playing dark side card. The problem is that you do not want to put too many dark side cards in your deck because otherwise you're going to be stuck. So the way you do this is you obviously try to draw a lot of cards in this deck. So Chancellor Palpatine ability draws us cards, Kuel draws us cards, a lot of cards. So whenever you got a lot of cards in hand, you are going to have more options and you're not going to feel as restricted by Chancellor Palpatine's ability. And then finally, you want to have smuggle, especially smuggle villainy cards, and smuggle villainy cards kind of gives you this kind of like this wild card that allows you to flip to the dark side even though you have no dark side cards in hand. And another thing you want is you want to have a substantial amount of card that has neither dark side or light side that you can flexibly play regardless on which side you are. So this is kind of like, in my opinion, those are the ingredients in order to make Palpatine playable, in my opinion, and not too restricted. So then, of course, we play all the best. And obviously, the upsides of doing this is you get loads of value from Palpatine's ability, and the other advantage is you get to play both the best light card in the game and the best dark side in the game, which is exactly what we do. We play Super Laser Blast, Snoke, and Avengers on the dark side. And on the light side, we play Luke Skywalker Redemption. Luke Skywalker gives us the persistent healing and the bold presence. Avenger gives us burst presence and defeats enemy units. Redemption gives us the huge amount of heal. Super Laser Blast swipe up the ball. All those ingredients are essential in order to control the game and to play real control decks. Tech is also extremely strong in control because obviously games can go very long, and having the abilities gives you just additional options to control the game. It's just very powerful. And then we got, of course, Lieutenant Chalsen, which is super strong in this deck because we have so many blue cards in the deck that it's very easy to make it a 6/6 for 4, and we're also drawing a lot of cards, which makes it very easy to have it. It's one of the easiest Chalsen, especially since if you're going to be playing this on the dark side, that means you manage to flip Sheev Palpatine, that means you draw a card, you drew an extra card as well, so it just makes it so easy to make it 6/6. Lompike, as I said, is more of a value tool to help us kind of have this card that allows us to switch to the dark side as well as giving us a relevant unit. Concordant Inceptor to block things into space. Sideboard is kind of not finalized at all. Like, sideboard is so early is just so difficult. We got Restock and the 3 Spark of Rebellion in order to fight control decks. We got some Make an Opening and some No Good to Be Dead for the aggro matchups, and a couple of Smuggler's Aid to heal is kind of to have some cheap healing that doesn't even stick in your hand. It's kind of cool. So that's basically the idea of the deck. I think a lot of people have been playing something similar. To try to, in my opinion, it seems to be on at first glance, it seems to be the most powerful way to abuse Palpatine. That's as far as I'm concerned. I have to say that Sheev Palpatine being cunning is kind of a bummer because cunning is really kind of an aggro tempo color, and obviously Sheev Palpatine is not abilities is not at all the ability that you want to play in a control. Like, since he does not deploy, it's not really a leader that you want to have in a tempo aggro tempo deck. So it would have been blue, so we could play like double blue, for example, or even like I would say even red. It would have been so much stronger. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense thematically that he's cunning, to be fair. But yeah, that's the deck, and I think it's a quite fun deck to play. I was in those circumstances, the Sheev Palpatine is not as big of a constraint. Still has those weird moments where you have to play very suboptimally, but it is definitely playable in that sense. We'll see how powerful the deck actually is. It's obviously still very early on, but I have good hope that this deck is going to be at least competitive. Next, we got our friend Count Dooku. This is Count Dooku in blue. Once again, blue seems to be the best color for Count Dooku to be in. I'll explain why in a minute. I think the main reason why is because the best exploit cards are in blue. Basically, that's just as simple as this. As well as you have some really strong enablers in blue as well. So this is something I've come to realize with Count Dooku in exploit in general, is that at least maybe if you're playing a not Gunray, you're going to be playing a lot of actual exploit cards. But in Count Dooku, I think it's more powerful to give exploit to a separatist unit that does not have exploit, rather than playing exploit cards and give them even more exploit with Count Dooku. Like, it is. So actually, Count Dooku is the exploit deck that encourages you to play no exploit cards at all, which is kind of interesting. It wants you to play separatist units, obviously, but it doesn't want you necessarily to play exploit unit. The only exploit card we're playing in this deck is the Malevolence, which in my opinion is the best one, and the Invention of Christosis, which I think is a very powerful tool to have in certain situations. So obviously in the early stage of the game, we are playing a lot of enablers. We are playing the Confederate Courier. We're playing the wartime trade officials. Those obviously are excellent ways to enable or exploit and keep in multiple turns in a row. So it's since with Count Dooku, usually we're only going to be exploiting one unit per turn. We're trying to use Count Dooku's ability almost every turn. Count Dooku is in this deck, Count Dooku's ability is insanely powerful. Like, we're basically using it almost every single turn. We know how powerful resource cheating abilities are in Star Wars Unlimited. We saw this, with, of course, with Young Han, with Old Han. Systematically, like, abilities that allows you to play cards faster are just systematically just very powerful in this game. We know how powerful ramp is, generally speaking. So having this ability to reduce the cost of our units by 2 every single turn is very powerful. So these are our enablers. Though Vanguard's infantry is also another exploit enabler. The cool thing about Vanguard infantry is, like, it does cost 1, so you play with for 1, you exploit it to play something reduces the cost by 2. That means you actually save the 1 resource in the process, and you also get a +1/+1 experience for your trouble. This allows us to do very nasty things, so we can go like the 3/4 Sentinel, so we can go like 4/5 Sentinels turn 1. We can obviously go General Grievous with a 5/5 turn 1. We have the Droid Commando, which gives us like a 5/4 for 1, 5/4 turn 1, and we got the Wing Leader thing that is a 4/5 in space turn 1. So all those 3 drops here are meant to be synergizing with Vanguard infantry. They're also just solid cards in general, but this really, the main idea here is to try to cheat those into play in turn 1 and puts tremendous amount of pressure. So yes, it does cost you 2 cards to do that, but I think it is well worth it. Poggle the Lesser is more of kind of an engine tool that you played on turn 1 and then you start generating tokens every turn. I've been very disappointed by the card. I found that to be quite difficult to use. First of all, if you don't play it on turn 1, the card becomes instantly bad. Like, you really need this to have this as in your opening hand. If you play this any later, it becomes way too slow because it's going to play exhausted. You have to wait an whole turn to get it, and the result is not great. So I might even consider taking off completely off the deck. Right now, I decided to keep it in, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of the card. I would maybe prefer to play the 2 resources, put 2 1/1 droids into play maybe. I'm not so sure, but anyway, E is quite strong. There's basically most of the time, as I said, whenever you want to be the openings that you want to be in doing this deck is basically turn 1 Vanguard infantry, turn 2 a 3-drop that gets an experience, or the other opening you want to do is something like one of those 2 turn 1 plays, and then on turn 2 you're going to be playing a 5-drop, while the B2 Legionaries or the Kraken. So that's basically kind of the openings that you want to do in this deck, and Poggle the Lesser doesn't help in either of those cases. So obviously Poggle the Lesser turn 1, then a 3-drop after is a very strong play, but it's a bit slower of an engine, to say the least. Then of course Super Technician, really strong to be exploited and ramp at the same time. We have a very expensive leader, so being able to ramp towards the Count Dooku is very nice. We got some of the best removal in the game with Paradox Size and Overwhelming Barrage, obviously. And then we got a bunch of great Confederate guards that can be cheated in play much earlier. So B2 Legionaries gives us this solid Sentinels, very important to have Sentinels deck. This deck is very bad against aggro, so this helps a lot to have this Sentinel units that can come into play. Does have Overwhelm as well. The Kraken basically comes to play as early as turn 2 with Dooku's ability and give us a bunch of droid tokens. The buff ability is also quite relevant, to be fair, so I like it quite a bit. And then of course, then we got Kalan. The card doesn't look so good, but once you manage to shit it into play, it is actually very strong. 5/7 for 6 is not amazing, but 5/7 for 4 is amazing, and it's very easy to play this card for only 4 resources as the Separatist. And on an attack ability, give +2/+2 to another card is very strong. If you get the initiative, you get to do this to 2 other cards. Usually just 1 is all you need. So yeah, this card is surprisingly powerful. It's actually the person who found this synergy was Beton. If you know him from the Soup Racers, he actually advocated very early on for Kalan to be one of the best cards to play with Count Dooku, and he was very right on this. Another card that was a bit obvious to everybody on how powerful it was going to be in Dooku is obviously the Dooku unit. Once again, 5/4 the card is already quite decent by himself, but once you get to discount it by 2 and play it for 5, it becomes a little bit absurd. It's a really, really strong card. Then we got Shu's side. Obviously, we put a bunch of 1-1 battle droids in play throughout the game, so having the ability to swap one of those cheap units for one of the opponent's strong units is going to be very powerful. It is situational, but in the right situation, it's very powerful. Then we got the Invisible Hand, which is an extremely good finisher. Can come into place as early as on the 7 resource cores. Gives us a bunch of battle droids token. If your opponent does not deal with it, then he can swing for 1,000,000 damage. And it's quite difficult to take down with 7 HP into space. So really strong finisher for the deck. The Malevolence is sort of a kind of an emergency thing. Comes into play, block a unit, puts a huge body into space, and has Restore as well. In my opinion, the best... it's the best... Malevolence is the best official into... the best space unit into the best, exploit enablers. And so in the sideboard here, we've got a couple of things. For value decks, a Vader can be quite good in this deck because we play a lot of 3 drops villainy. So if we're playing against very grindy matchups, Vader would be pretty much our only non-separatist card in the deck, alongside Separatist Technician. Then we got a couple of more cards against aggro, a couple of more cards against control, and that's basically the deck. So overall, what do I think about the deck? I think the deck is quite decent. It definitely does. It took a while for us to figure out what was the right build for him. One of the major inconveniences of Dooku, in my opinion, and something that we're gonna have to struggle with for a while, is it feels a little bit like Palpatine in the sense that it's very weak to aggro. And the reason why that's the case is because we don't have... Okay, we play some Sentinels here, we play the 3-4 Sentinels and stuff, but if playing a few Sentinels was enough to win against aggro, I think everybody would know that by now. We try to build a deck to be able to win against aggro. We have the Droid Commando, it's early ambush. We have presence in space and ground to try to meet the opponent. We have some healing with the Malevolence. But the problem is, ultimately the problem is the leader deploy. Count Dooku deploys so incredibly late into the game. I think the deck would be so much better if Count Dooku was able to deploy earlier. And that's kind of deploy earlier, maybe with weaker stats, obviously, but if he was able to deploy earlier, the deck would be so much better, I feel like. Because you got all these super pressuring plays that you can make. You can do like those crazy kind of tempo plays with Kalani on turn 3, with B2 Rocket Trooper, B2 Legionary, and Kraken on turn 2, and this General Grievous 5/5 on turn 1, all those super like aggressive pressuring play. But then you can't deploy your leader. So it's like, it would be so much better if we could put those things aggressively and then deploy the leader at the same time to really overwhelm the opponent. A little bit the same way as Boba Fett can overwhelm people with his ability as well as his early deploy. So, in my opinion, so it's a decent deck, but it's going to have to fix the aggro problem if it wants to be a thing in the meta, I feel like. And then, of course, I wanted to show you a list that I think is basically just a meta deck that has been updated with the new set. This is my good old Sabine green deck that I've modified with the new card from this expansion. So it's not going to take long. There's only 2 cards that I've added to the deck. I've replaced Schizo Onyo by Jyn Erso. I think Jyn Erso has multiple qualities over Schizo Onyo. Schizo Onyo, the ability to remove upgrade was very rarely useful, so it was basically just 3-2 for 2 Saboteur, which is good, solid, but not amazing. Jyn Erso has multiple advantages over it. So the first advantage that she has is that she is a rebel, and that's a really big deal for a 2-drop to be a rebel in this deck, because obviously it means that you can play with Wing Leader and Fleet Lieutenants for massive amount of damage. The reason why Alliance X-Wing still sees plays in this deck is because it's a rebel in space, and there's just simply no other good rebel in space on top of Green Squadron. So that's the reason why people still play Alliance X-Wing even nowadays. And I think Jyn Erso is a good choice for that very reason. So you can basically swing 5 on turn 1, just like a Battlefield Marine. The ability to also gain +1 attack and Saboteur whenever a unit has left play is also pretty strong, because in this deck, you're not completely ignoring the opponent. You're going to be killing some units every once in a while, notably with Energy Conversion Lab, and the ability to just get an extra attack and Saboteur when that happens is a pretty big deal. So I'm pretty confident that Jyn Erso is going to establish itself as a new addition to the deck. We'll see how it pans out, but I think it's very likely that Sabine players are going to be completing their package of turn 1 play with a Rebel. On the other hand, I did replace a Rebel with a non-Rebel, and this time it's going to be in the 3-drop. I replaced the Fighter for Freedom by Jessie. I said it earlier, Jessie is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated card of the set. It is just insane to play a 5-4 for 3. So giving Battle Droid tokens to the opponent is actually not that big of a deal, and sometimes it can even be an upside. I'll explain why. So basically, the first thing, of course, is 5-4 for 3 is insane. There's just simply nothing else in the game that can deal that much damage that early in the game. I mean, obviously, the fact that it can deal 5 damage without even needing a Fleet Lieutenant or Wing Leader boost is just massive. The fact that it has 4 health is also very relevant, means that it cannot be killed by any of the early games unit that's going to have 3 attack, which there's plenty of, because everybody is trying to counter Battlefield Marine. But yeah, good luck getting rid of Jessie early on in the game. It's just not that easy at all. And if you're playing in a matchup where giving droid tokens to your opponent is potentially problematic, you can just decide to not play it at all and resource it. So that's also one of the things. So the reason why sometimes battle droids can be an upside and not a downside is because it gives very cheap body for the opponent that you can then ambush with K2SO or Wrecker and deal a bunch of damage to the opponent base. So sometimes the way you protect yourself against Sabine is by having no cheap units on the board, because you do not want those units to just die to a Wrecker, because you do not want to give Wrecker an immediate way to damage your base. So it is something that Wrecker or K2SO. So this is something that sometimes can be kind of a counter synergy, can be actually work to your advantage. But really the crux of the argument is like the 5-4 for 3 is just insane. That's just the crux of the argument. The fact that it's not a rebel doesn't really matter so much, because in my opinion, being a rebel in Sabine is very important for the turn 1 play. So if you're playing, because you want to go A-Wing, you want to go turn 1 rebel, turn 2 fleet lieutenants, turn 2 wing leader. But then later on in that, it's not as big of a deal to not be a rebel. It's a bit annoying it makes your rebel assault slightly worse, but other than this, it's just a pretty solid. So I don't know if Jessie is going to be establishing like durably. Fighter for Freedom is a very strong card, so it is definitely like Sabine is starting to become like so stacked with good card that it's going to become difficult to find new card. But I think if there's one card in the set that is going to have a chance to make it to the deck, it has to be Jessie and Jyn Erso. The rest of the deck is pretty traditional Sabine deck, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Anyway, these were my six lists that you guys can try out for yourself and see and have fun with. Early on, I do not guarantee that all those decks are super competitive, but it's a good starting point to try to explore the new expansion and have fun with the new mechanics. I wanted to feature new leaders, tried as much as possible to put new cards in there, and I hope you guys enjoy this very much. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.